Welcome to the review edition of Ask Frank. I'm Amanda Borges here with Frank Frangie on GridironNow.com. If you watched the Florida versus Tennessee game, you were sitting on the edge of your seat. Of course, the Gators did come away with the win, extending their streak to 11 against the Vols. Frank, how did the Gators come away with the win?
Boy, I tell you what, I think there's 1,000 ways. Will Grier played great. They caught passes. They made fourth downs. But here's a significant thing. When Tennessee went up 26-14 and then 27-14, everybody's discussed not going for two. I think that's when Florida relaxed. They seemed to be a super tight team until that point with 10 minutes or so. Then all of a sudden you're down by 2 touchdowns. I think Florida's players and Florida's coaches then said, screw it, let's relax. They weren't relaxed the entire time until then, and then they started making plays, and another thing happened. They developed a receiving core. Antonio Callaway is a superstar receiver. He's only a true freshman. They've needed that guy. They've looked forever. Brandon Powell not only caught a big pass on fourth down earlier in the game, not only caught a touchdown pass to get him to within a touchdown, but threw a huge block on the Antonio Callaway 63-yard play. So they found some receivers. Grier played great. Tennessee got tight a little bit, but I think Florida relaxed after they went down 2 touchdowns with 10 minutes to go. I thought that was really the key to them playing a lot better, and they played a lot better after that.
Well, Frank, you mentioned Will Grier. He, of course, played the whole game for Florida. Treon Harris did not play because he was suspended. Did the Gators find their quarterback on Saturday?
Amanda, I don't think there's any question. I think Will Grier's got to be their guy. In a weird sort of way, that suspension helped them. Because had he not, think about this now, had Grier or had Harris not been suspended, I think they would have pulled Grier. Grier was struggling. He was a little rattled. He was all over the place. And they've showed they want to play both guys when one guy's struggling. Well, guess what? They had no choice. They could not go to Treon Harris, so they had to play Grier, and that's when he started growing up before our eyes. They made the situation, forced them to play Will Grier. Look, with all due respect, there's times that Treon Harris has proven he's not reliable. He was not there. He was suspended for the game. That's reality. I'm not completely sure he shouldn't have been suspended for the Birmingham Bowl when he was driving with a suspended license with marijuana in the car in December. He didn't get suspended then. He did get suspended this time. I think Grier's their guy. I think Grier made some big boy plays in that game. I think Will Grier, and he's only a redshirt freshman starting his second SEC game. I think Florida found their quarterback. I think it should be Grier for the long haul.
Well, let's look at the other side of this game with Tennessee. Frank, did they completely blow their chance of winning this game? Yeah,
they kind of did in a couple of ways. I thought they got tight. Obviously, you've got to go for 2 when you're up 26-14. I saw the same thing happen in 2002 when Bobby Bowden went up 26-14, same exact score on Miami, kicked the extra point. Miami scored 2 touchdowns, won by the exact same score, 28-27. I've seen it happen before. Obviously, Butch Jones blew it. And frankly, he didn't do a very good job explaining it afterwards. He said afterwards, well, we looked at our chart, our defense had been playing well. What he should have said is, I blew it. He should have said, I blew it, and he did. So I thought that hurt them. I also thought Tennessee got tight. They were afraid to throw the ball in their last offensive possession before the field goal attempt, the one before Florida took the lead. You've got to try and win the game, not run it 3 times and punt it. I thought Tennessee blew it offensively. And then at the end of the game, they had to use both timeouts to avoid runoffs. That should never happen. Tennessee got tight. When you've lost 10 in a row to a team, and all of a sudden that team looks like they're about to win the game again, you tend to get tight. I thought Tennessee got tight. I feel for them because I think Tennessee's got a better team than they've had. I think they're improved. But they played tight in that game, and it cost them the game against Florida.
Well, speaking of blowing it, Arkansas let their win get away against Texas A&M. Are the Aggies real contenders in the West?
I think, first of all, for Arkansas, I think Arkansas is a mess. Brett Bielema needs to calm down. He needs to quit being tough guy, and he needs to say, look, we got to restart this thing. Everybody thought they would be way better than they have been. I know they lost a great running back, but they've got a good running back. They're developing that culture of forgetting how to win games. So I think they're in trouble. To your question about Texas A&M, they're for real. That game was the get over the hump game. They're going to be, even though it was played at Jerry's World against a rival, you could tell they were going through the motions a little bit. But if you have that game where you go through the motions and still find a way to win the game, you're in it. I think A&M's in it. The problem is it's a good West again. Alabama's for real. Forget what happened against Ole Miss. They're good. Ole Miss is good. Remember what happened against Alabama. They're legit. A&M's legit. I think LSU was a little bit asleep at the wheel, but I think they're a good team too. The West is tough. You better believe the Aggies are in it.
Let's take a look at Auburn. Before the season began, everyone favored them. Now, is there any hope for the Tigers?
Not really. They're a mess. The team's not very good. I think people have figured out Auburn's not very good. I think they've lost their confidence, and now teams are going to play with great confidence against them. I think Auburn is as big a disappointment as I can remember in the SEC in 20 years. Based on everything people expected, many people, and yours truly is among them, had Auburn in the Final Four. They're really a mess now. Their quarterback situation is messed up. They're not very good defensively. I think Auburn is a mess. The biggest disappointment in the SEC for me in 2 decades.
Well, LSU seemed to be pretty evenly matched with Syracuse. Were you surprised by their struggle even though they won?
I sleep at the wheel. This was a sandwich game. Teams have sandwich games. Remember this, LSU's still trying to find itself offensively. We know they can hand the ball to Leonard Fournette. Brandon Harris is finally starting to play. They've got great playmakers. I think they were asleep at the wheel. You wouldn't think so. Usually you're asleep at the wheel when you're at home and a directional school comes in. You would think if you travel to play a noon game on ESPN against the ACC in a loud stadium, and I've been in Syracuse, man, that Carrier Dome gets loud for football, you would think you wouldn't be asleep at the wheel. I thought it was a sandwich game a little bit.
Well, what about Ole Miss? They had a hard time holding off Vanderbilt, who hasn't won an SEC matchup in 2 years, Frank.
Yeah, you know what? It's a classic sandwich game, Amanda. They had to play Alabama. The whole world's talking about that game. Next week, they've got to go to the Swamp to a suddenly pretty good Florida team. This one was right in the middle. I don't think they paid any attention to that game. They got lucky, by the way. Vanderbilt messed that up. Vanderbilt was about to go in for the go-ahead score, messed it up. I thought awful play calling on Vanderbilt's part, and then they missed a short field goal. After that, Ole Miss could kind of catch their breath and go win that game. Classic sandwich game, and that's where they were asleep at the wheel. Don't kid yourself. Ole Miss is legit.
That's a wrap on Ask Frank. For other hot topics in the SEC, check out gridironnow.com. We'll see you next time.